Laotian national Tu Li Vang was convicted of repeatedly sexually abusing a 10-year-old girl in the state of Minnesota. Just days before this foreign sex offender was scheduled to be deported, Tim Walz, the governor, issued him a pardon. Well, this week I revoked his legal status in the United States, and as a result, federal agents took him into custody, and as of today, he has been removed from the United States.
All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. Now, if you just watched that snippet with me, you already know we are jumping straight into something massive today. What Marco Rubio just did here is a total game changer. For months, political watchers have been talking about leadership, border security, and federal accountability. But what we just saw wasn't just talk. That was immediate, concrete action. When you have a state governor issuing a pardon to a convicted child predator, and the Secretary of State steps in, revokes his legal standing, and gets federal agents to remove him from the country, that sends a crystal clear message. Rubio basically told state officials, if you refuse to protect American citizens and children, the federal government will step up and do it for you. We're about to watch the rest of this breakdown, including the background on this case and the intense House Oversight hearing where Governor Tim Walz gets pressed on state oversight and federal cooperation. Before we dive into the full video, if you believe in law and order, child safety, and holding public officials accountable, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below letting me know what you think about Rubio's move. Let's get into the full clip.
Just weeks ago, a convicted sex offender and a foreign national was shielded from deportation by the governor of Minnesota. Laotian national Tu Li Vang was convicted of repeatedly sexually abusing a 10-year-old girl in the state of Minnesota. He even tried to pay his victim for her silence, and he called his heinous crimes a minor thing. Just days before this foreign sex offender was scheduled to be deported, Tim Walz, the governor, issued him a pardon, setting him free to once again endanger the children of America. Well, this week I revoked his legal status in the United States, and as a result, federal agents took him into custody, and as of today, he has been removed from the United States. Because of our action, this foreign criminal will never pose a threat to any American ever again. Americans must never be forced by their elected leaders to live alongside foreign sex criminals who have no right to begin with to reside in our country. This administration will always stand with the American people and defend them from violent criminals.
The now 42-year-old Vang was granted a pardon in June, more than 20 years after he was convicted. In his application for clemency last year, Vang wrote, "The shame and regret I carry, especially as my children have grown older and learned about my past, run deep. If it were possible to undo what happened, I would do so without hesitation." Vang's conviction dates back to 2006. According to DHS, Vang's status as an illegal immigrant and his conviction led to his pending removal from the United States. Police say Vang called the assault a cultural thing and offered the victim money to remain silent. The Minnesota Clemency Review Commission, which includes Governor Walz, has the authority to grant pardons in the state. The recent pardon meant Vang was allowed to stay in the country despite his criminal record. However, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison previously said the Trump administration does not have to restore his green card and could restart proceedings. Earlier, during a heated House Oversight Committee hearing, Representative Glenn Grothman sharply questioned Minnesota Governor Tim Walz about Minnesota fraud and unrest tied to ICE enforcement operations.
From Wisconsin. Thank you. We'll go for Governor Walz again. A major focus of today's hearing has been the misuse of federal funds distributed through the Child Care and Development Block Grant. This program is supposed to be helping working families afford child care, and I think the taxpayers expect these programs to be protected from waste and fraud. Most states operate these programs responsibly. The national improper payment average is about 4%. As you know, I kind of watch what's going on in Minnesota because it's a state adjacent to Wisconsin. It's amazing, if you're a congressman, the number of people who get Minnesota and Wisconsin confused. But when that number climbs above the national average of 4%, it should be a warning sign that oversight has failed. Minnesota's improper payment rate got up to 11%. That's not a small administrative mistake, over almost 3 times the national average. That is a system that's clearly not being monitored the way it should be. When Wisconsin had a similar program several years ago, when I was in the state legislature, in 2010, we uncovered fraud in our child care assistance program. Wisconsin did not look away. We took responsibility, implemented serious reforms, and those reforms included expanding background checks for providers, creating a dedicated fraud investigation unit, strengthening eligibility requirements, and instituting a comprehensive audit system. That would have been when Scott Walker was governor. Because of these reforms, Wisconsin now has an improper payment of under 1%. So in other words, we almost totally wiped out the problem. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because Governor Walker took responsibility and acted quickly. He thought fraud was a problem. Governor Walz, Minnesota had similar warning signs. Investigators, auditors, even internal officials kept raising concerns about fraud in social service systems. And it didn't just cost taxpayers money. These programs are meant to help children and working families. When fraud drains millions of these dollars from these programs, that money is not reaching the people it was intended to serve. First of all, Governor Walz, when did your administration first become aware that fraud risks were escalating in Minnesota's child care assistance program? You were kind of an outlier in the whole country.
Well, thank you, Congressman. This dates back to about 2012 that the action has been being taken, and as I stated earlier, on our first days in office, we started taking action. I would ask, if I could, on this, anything that Governor Walker did, I would appreciate if you would show us what those actions were. We're more than happy to implement them, and that's what we've started over the last 7 years.
Reports indicate that some providers continued receiving payments even after the fraud concerns were raised. Was that a decision made by your administration, and who specifically you feel did not?
I can't speak specifically to which those were. Decisions are made at the department level, but I can't speak to what those allegations were.
We're told it was still 11% under your administration. When fraud indicators appear in a program funded by federal taxpayers, do you believe the responsible action is to pause payments until those concerns are investigated?
I don't think it's that simple. As I said, these programs provide a really important service, and child care is a critical one. The issue is trying to make sure the legitimate payments are made and that you're stopping fraud. So I don't think in all cases that pausing those payments is the right action.
Okay, just in general, I'll say when the fraud percentage reached 11% in Minnesota, and we got it down under 1% in Wisconsin, I think it's a cause for concern. I'll give you another question, because a little bit of this hearing wandered a little bit to what happened in your streets out there. When any agency comes to Wisconsin, any federal agency, I've talked to several of our sheriffs, could be ICE, could be Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, could be FBI, could be Secret Service. Our sheriffs always try to coordinate with the federal agencies, ask them what they need. You need us to set up a perimeter. Can we help you by transporting people to the local jail? Do you just want some squad cars parked around to presumably keep troublemakers at bay? That was not done in Minnesota like it's routinely done in certainly all of the...
I don't think that's a correct characterization. I think Tom Holman indicated that those things do happen and have been happening.
During the time in which you had the serious riots, or whatever you want to call them, in Minnesota, I believe that you did not reach out for your state law enforcement to help out federal law enforcement, in part because you're a sanctuary state. And
that is incorrect. Tom Holman indicated we are not. I don't know what to tell you, Congressman. We did. We want to cooperate. That's not what you saw on the streets.
Right. We did not see cooperation.
You saw ICE agents shooting people in the head. You saw little children being drug out. You saw ICE agents indiscriminately throwing smoke grenades, and I think what the world saw was peaceful resistance and a defense of their neighbors. So this is not about immigration reform. This was about an untrained force that came in, not with the intention of immigration.
I would say that you did not have the the interaction between local law enforcement and federal agencies that is routinely seen around the country. Thank you.
Watching that whole clip really puts the entire situation into perspective. And honestly, Marco Rubio's intervention looks better and better the more you look at the facts. Let's break down what actually happened here. Because this isn't just about immigration policy. This is about common sense and public safety. First off, look at the offender in question, Tuli Vang. We are talking about a foreign national who was convicted of repeatedly sexually abusing a 10-year-old child. On top of that, he tried to pay off the victim to keep quiet and brushed off his horrific actions by calling it a cultural thing. He was set to be deported, which is where any sensible system should lead. But right before he's sent out, Governor Tim Walz's Clemency Review Board hands him a state pardon, effectively shielding him from removal and opening the door for him to stay right here in our communities. That is where Marco Rubio stepped up. Rubio didn't hesitate, hide behind red tape, or issue a lukewarm press release. He used federal executive authority to revoke Vang's legal status and had ICE take him into custody immediately. What I respect about Rubio's statement is how clear and unambiguous it was. Americans should never be forced by their elected leaders to live alongside violent foreign sex criminals. Period. End of story. When a state government fails its primary duty, which is protecting innocent citizens and children, the federal government has a moral and legal obligation to intervene. Rubio showed real executive leadership here. He drew a firm line in the sand and reminded everyone that compassion belongs to victims, not predators. And then, when you look at the second half of the video with Congressman Glenn Grothman questioning Governor Walz during a House Oversight hearing, it connects the bigger picture. Grothman pointed out how Minnesota's Child Care Assistance Program suffered an 11% improper payment rate due to rampant fraud, nearly 3 times the national average, while neighbor Wisconsin brought theirs down to under 1% by taking responsibility and enforcing strict oversight. When you combine that kind of lax oversight on taxpayer funds with a willingness to pardon a convicted sex offender, it shows a severe gap in executive prioritization. While state leadership was making excuses for skyrocketing fraud rates and dodging federal law enforcement coordination, Marco Rubio was getting actual results. He didn't turn this into a standard partisan speech. He executed the law, got a dangerous criminal off American soil, and gave families peace of mind. That's why people are paying close attention to Marco Rubio right now. He's demonstrating that leadership isn't about political rhetoric or sound bites. It's about taking decisive action to keep American neighborhoods safe. What are your thoughts on Rubio stepping in to override state-level clemency in cases like this? Let me know in the comments, share this video around, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.